Genshin Impact has been around for about 3.5 years now, give or take a couple of months. As someone who has played pretty much from day one, albeit with a 4-month break near the start of the game before Dragonspine came out, as you can see, I have a large number of characters, and, you know, it allows me to play the game pretty much however I like for the most part. With that in mind though, the game is a gacha. So inevitably there are going to be characters that come around that I just simply cannot afford to pull. I cannot afford to pull every single character. I'm not a whale. The only amount I spend on this game is a Welkin every month, and that's about it. Sometimes I get the battle pass, but it's pretty rare that I bother doing that at all. But it's inevitable that I can't get every single character in the game. But with that in mind, there are several 5-star characters that I don't actually own that, to be brutally honest, I don't ever want to own, and I thought it would be an interesting and contentious video to go through some of them and explain my reasonings why. So let us begin. Starting off with Lyney. Lyney is a character I don't think I'm ever going to end up pulling for, and not even because I dislike his character completely. He is a charge attack character, kind of like Ganyu. I'm not a massive fan of charge attack characters at the best of times, and Lyney, don't get me wrong, I've played him. I love the card animations he possesses. They're a lot of fun. I tried pulling him during his initial release, didn't get him, and I was like, that sucks. I honestly, though, have no intentions for Lyney again. He seems like a lot of fun. I've had fun when he's appeared in events and you get to try him out. Again, not a character I see myself ever pulling for again. I will say this now, standard characters I'm not going to be talking about just because they're standard characters. You get them by luck or unluck depending on your worldview. I'll be honest, I actually really like Arataki Itto's gameplay, but I don't see myself ever pulling for him, which sucks because he's a really good Geo unit. He hits hard. He's a Claymore user, which is my favorite weapon type in the game. And he is honestly just quite a lot of fun. But every time he's come around, I've just never been interested enough in pulling for him. And it sucks for him. He's a fun character. I don't see myself ever pulling for him, especially now that I've got Navia. I have a Geo Claymore user now that I'm more than happy with. Love Navia. I think if he came along and we had a drought of really interesting characters, potentially I could see myself picking up Itto again, but for the most part there's very little chance of Itto getting any love from me, and I'm sorry. And it's not because I dislike the character. I actively think he is very fun. I just don't see myself having any use for him. Xiao has hurt my soul too much in this game. Xiao has had the unfortunate case of being a character I really wanted to pull in the early days of the game, and every time his rerun would come up, it would be with someone else I wanted instead. So I think one of the times was, I think it was Yalan was one of them, and there was another one might have been with Huta, I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically every time he's been rerun, it's with a character I really want instead of him, and he's just lost it every single time. I've gone for the other character, I've won that character, and it's been great. So at this point, it's been so long, Xiao, that I just can't see myself pulling for you. And again, I really like Xiao's gameplay. I know some people aren't too fussed by the whole pressy, jump, plunge, attack, specification of his kit, but I find it very appealing. He is a hyper carry. He does require, pretty much all of your team's resources to be embedded into him for as long as possible. And with some characters, it's not the easiest, but we've gotten more characters now that nowadays is a bit easier to keep that uptime going, whereas in the earlier days of the game, it might be a bit more difficult. But yeah, Xiao, as a character, I really enjoy Xiao, but he's just, I'm never going to end up pulling for him. And that sucks because he's a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed his gameplay whenever he comes up in events and stuff. But yeah, a lot of these characters coming up have the bad fortune of being quite old at this point, that I would rather have one of the newer characters rather than one of the older ones, which I think is to be expected with any gacha, to be honest, unfortunately. Next up, we have Ganyu. Ganyu is, to be brutally honest, she is not a character I enjoy in the slightest. I remember during Ganyu meta where you pretty much just charge attacked, one-shot everything, and it was a time where that was the only thing I remember content creators ever really doing. All of the content would just be cleared with Ganyu just charge attacking, and it looks so dull. and boring to me. I never had much interest in it. That's unfortunately the case with bow users, especially with charge attack bow users. I just don't find them particularly interesting. The bow weapon type is probably my least favorite in the game, I'd say, which is ironic because my favorite character in the game, Tartaglia, uses a bow, but he solves that problem by creating a melee stance, which kind of just goes to show that I really wish they'd add some kind of like dual dagger weapon type in the game, but I don't know if they have any plans of adding new weapon types anytime soon, but you can but dream. Anyway, Ganyu's design is great. Ganyu's damage, still really good. And I know that nowadays you don't have to, build her specifically just for charge attacks. You can build her as a sub DPS with her ult and whatnot. As a character though, she just doesn't interest me. And every time she's ever come up, I've always said that I won't pull for her, and that's stayed the same ever since her release, and it's not changing anytime soon, I'm afraid. Next up, we have Albedo. Albedo is another one of those characters that kind of suffers from the fact that he is quite old at this point, which sucks because he is, again, also a really fun Geo character. The idea of spending like 1500 Primo Gems for a 50% chance to get Albedo is not an idea I particularly love. Albedo is a fun character. I love his collaboration with Geo characters, and he's kind of the reason I wish I could do the Zhongli Albedo, I think it's Geo MC build, where all the Geo structures resonate off one another. I remember when that was first created, it looked like so much fun, and I was really jealous that I could never play it. Nowadays, I doubt it's anywhere near as useful as it was back then, but it looked like a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the look of it. And whenever Albedo comes up in events, he is a lot of fun to play. But I've never played him and gone, I really want this character on my account. He's just, whenever he's cropped up, there's always been other characters I've wanted more. I've never had enough spare Primo Gems to get him. And unfortunately, I don't see that changing anytime soon, especially not with how many insane characters we've been getting with Fontaine. Next up, we have Zhongli. Now, Zhongli, interestingly enough, is one of those characters that is on this list partly because I've never gotten him. I think I've pulled for Zhongli on 2 separate occasions on 2 separate reruns. And the reason I did that is because of how insanely good his shield and shred is. But nowadays, shield, I feel, isn't anywhere near as useful as it used to be, or maybe I've just gotten used to iframing, or maybe healing has finally become a bit more useful, with some characters both healing and, providing utility and whatnot. For instance, Kuki Shinobu. Nowadays, I have zero use for his shield. His initial appeal to me was for his shield and how strong it was, and then, ironically enough, I'm pretty sure one of his rerun banners, he had Diona on the banner, if I remember correctly, and I got her instead, and I built her for my shielder, and she did the job great at a budget. But, yeah. Zhongli is one of those characters I've tried to get twice. He's never once come home, as you can clearly see. He probably never will, and that's fine. But at this point in the game's age, I'm not too fussed about getting Zhongli anymore. I don't need the shield. The shred, I'm sure, is still very useful, but with some characters doing an insane amount of damage anyway, I'm not too fussed with the additional shred. So yeah, that's Zhongli. Again, I don't dislike any of these characters with the exception of maybe Ganyu. It's just a case of I don't see myself wanting to pull them whenever they come up again. And it's not a case of I don't like them, it's a case of I don't see myself using them. And you know what, I'd much rather just have someone maybe who's new and more exciting down the line than someone who I'm not too fussed by. The reason I'm not talking about every other character is because, characters like Ryofsli and Alhaitham and Ayato are characters I do quite want, and I may talk about, them in a separate video. But today, I'm sticking purely to characters that I don't have, and I don't ever really want at this point. Klee. Now, Klee is an interesting one, because Klee is actually a question mark. So, Klee, I don't love how heavy Klee's animations feel, and it's partly because she feels like obviously it's because she's lobbing arced bombs, essentially. And as someone that picked up Yanfei around the same time that Klee was, I think, being rerun, possibly. So it was like a competition between Klee and Yanfei at the time, and I absolutely adored Yanfei's more sniper-esque playstyle, as it was described at the time. And I just loved how smooth everything Yanfei had about her kit. The basic attacks into charge attack, into E, into charge attack again, into burst, and then into charge attack again. It was so very satisfying. I love playing Yonfei. It's very smooth. And then to try out Klee, who was a lot heavier with her attacks, but still very damaging, of course, being a pyro DPS. It just didn't feel as nice, and it's always made me quite hesitant to pull for Klee. But I do like Klee's kit a lot. I like her Dodoko bombs, I like her Q, I just don't like her basic attacks. So maybe one day, possibly. Klee is a question mark. For the most part, it is a no. But there's just that little asterisk that makes me think maybe one day. Because I did actually buy her alternative outfit when it was on sale when it first got released. Because I was like, I don't use these gems for anything else. I might as well get a stupidly expensive outfit for it while I'm here. So I did. So maybe one day, for that reason alone, I'll get Klee. But we shall see. And then last but not least, we have Venti. Venti, even at the beginning of the game, when I saw him, he was the very first banner character. Even then, I was like, I have no interest in this gentleman. As time has gone on, my opinions have changed slightly. Again, I don't care for his bow. Again, I don't care for his skill or anything like that. His burst, though, as time has gone on, the idea of having a burst that just vacuums in everything into a point in the most precise animo way possible is very appealing. And that does always give me pause to be like, well, maybe Venti could be very useful. But then I remember I own Kazuha. And Kazuha obviously is incredibly good. And if you're going to own any animo character, Kazuha's probably your best bet in terms of EM. But Venti, Venti does a great job of grouping up enemies just as much as Kazuha does. Even to a point, he's probably better at it, because with Kazuha's ult, it slowly pulls them into the center, whereas with Venti's, they kind of just get stuck in a black hole until everything dies or the burst ends. It is a very appealing burst, don't get me wrong, but other than that, I don't have much interest in the character. And the fact that he's been out since the very beginning of the game makes me not want to pull him even more. But yeah, that's about it, really. I don't think I have much more to say, I think. That's the gist of it. I don't dislike any of these characters, it's just that I don't see myself ever really pulling for them, and that's just how it is. I won't be talking about any characters I regret, because honestly, off the top of my head, I can't really think of too many, which is surprising because I have a ton looking at them. It's actually quite daunting. Yeah. And again, I didn't go through the characters that, I really want, like Nailu. I would love to have Nailu. The more I think about Nailu, the more I think about, yeah, she's probably going to be a guarantee rerun pull the next time she comes up, but that all depends on when that happens. But yeah, that's the gist. The characters, none of them have done anything particularly wrong. It's just at this point in the game's age, and with the prospect of newer, more interesting characters coming along the way, I just don't see myself ever going back and pulling for them. It's just how gachas are, I guess. The older things get, the sort of less useful they become, at least in the eyes of certain players, and in that case, me. But just because they're on my list doesn't mean they have to be on yours, and in some cases, their misuse, shall we say, isn't even true. For instance, one character I did get completely by accident is Kokomi. I didn't have much interest in ever pulling for Kokomi. I accidentally got her in 30 pulls one time. I love having Kokomi. Yeah, that was a great time. So, accidentally getting one, if for some reason I just randomly did a 10 pull, I would have no complaints about. But I'm never actively going to spend like 1500 Prima Gems in the hopes of getting them when there are other characters on the horizon that just appeal to me more. But that's purely my opinion. That doesn't mean it's true for everyone. That's the beauty of this game, is that everyone can have their favorite characters and everyone can have their different build compositions, and they can all be changed at the drop of a hat. And what you pull and what I pull is completely irrespective of each other, and that's great. But with that, I've said all I needed to on the matter, so I will be saying my goodbyes. Thank you for those that stuck around to the end. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. Let me know down in the comments below what characters you currently don't have and have literally zero intentions on ever pulling. I would honestly love to know, to see if anyone's got any characters that I have that they just simply could not even fathom seeing themselves with. Because, you know what? I respect the honesty. With that though, I've been James, the Mayor of Jamestown, and until next time, goodbye.